Food trends come and go. For a while, people were covering their Thanksgiving turkeys in bacon. Remember that? But not all trends should be thrown out permanently. These once popular Turkey Day desserts deserve another chance.
Vinegar?
Okay, the name needs some work. Vinegar pie was at its most popular all the way back during the Great Depression, when branding was less of a concern, and fruit was harder to come by. Just trust us, this classic confection won't taste like downing a spoonful of vinegar. Recipes for it, some dating back to 1905, call for melting together sugar and vinegar, baking that into a pie crust, then sometimes topping that with meringue. The resulting pie isn't vinegary at all. It's more akin to a lemon meringue pie, which also tamps down the sour with some sweetness. The magic of baking. Vinegar pie will even take on that lemony yellow color. There's a quite enjoyable amount of tartness and tang left over in the finished product. It's a delicious dessert and a fascinating conversation topic all in one. Here's another one that could really use a more appealing name. But don't judge hot milk cake on what it sounds like. This one-time holiday favorite is best described as a sort of dense, rich, sponge cake-like dessert. This was one of the go-to cakes before boxed cake mixes became popular. It isn't much harder to make than what comes in a box, truth be told. The hot milk part of the name comes from the first step, melting butter in warmed milk before adding it to the dry ingredients. The resulting cake is delightfully spongy, and it's a great medium for adding all kinds of toppings and additional flavors. Just to name a few ideas, a lemon glaze, fresh fruit, frosting. Or on Thanksgiving, why not a cranberry compote? Or a gingerbread crumb topping? The versatility of this cake is part of why it was so enduringly popular in the early 20th century.
Could that be mincemeat pie?
It certainly is.
Mincemeat pies haven't fallen out of fashion everywhere. They're still quite popular in the UK, for example. For Europeans, they date back as far as the 12th century, when Crusaders encountered them in the Middle East. At one time, the meat part of the name was quite literal. Recipes from the late 18th century include beef alongside suet, apples, and spices. Over time, though, the meat gave way to just the mince, and most modern recipes call for things like raisins, currants, candied fruit, rum, and flavorings like clove and nutmeg. Mincemeat pies were a staple of Thanksgiving tables in the US throughout the 19th century, and even up to the 1960s. They fell out of fashion for whatever reason, presumably the rise of canned pie fillings. But for people who like pies that are rich but aren't overly sweet, they're a great option. Chiffon pies date back to the 1920s, and they can be traced back to just one person, Monroe Strauss. As a child, Strauss had gotten sick after eating pudding. It made him hate cream pies, so he came up with a new, lighter version that had a pleasantly soft and silky texture, the chiffon pie. Fast forward a few decades to the mid-20th century, and chiffon pies had become wildly popular. Now they're kind of thought of as a throwback or retro dessert, but they deserve another shot. They're even perfect for Thanksgiving. What better way to wrap up a heavy, rich meal of turkey, gravy, and all the fixins than with a light and airy pie? We're not the first ones to think that either. In a radio Q&A from the 1930s, a cranberry chiffon pie was the U.S. Department of Agriculture's suggestion for a great Thanksgiving dessert. With just a few ingredients, a delightful texture, and easy-to-follow instructions, a tart, sweet, and deliciously silky cranberry chiffon pie remains a sure win.
I wonder why it doesn't work as a pie. Grape pie? There's no grape pie.
Wrong.
Oh, but there is! Farmers in upstate New York have been growing Concord grapes since the 1870s, and by the 1950s and 60s, people in the region were making them into a pie filling. Two specific people, in fact, Irene Bouchard and Al Hodges of Naples, New York. Hodges was a restaurant owner looking for something uniquely New York to sell, and Bouchard was the one baking grape pies for the restaurant. At least regionally, these pies were incredibly popular for a time, so why not bring it back? That said, it'll take a bit of a deft touch. If you're not careful, you can end up with a soggy crust. But think of it as a baking challenge. If you succeed, you'll get a deliciously sweet pie that's perfect alongside a glass of dessert wine. You know, maybe a lot of these desserts would have lasted if they had better names. Apple slump does not sound especially exciting, but maybe we could spin the name into an appeal to home cooks. If you're in a slump after spending hours cooking Thanksgiving dinner, but still need to make dessert, then this is the perfect option. Not only is it delicious, but it comes together in about 15 minutes and bakes in about 50. You can actually make a slump with many different types of fruit, but let's talk about apples for simplicity. An apple slump is just sliced apples, cinnamon, sugar, and some fall spices baked until soft, then baked again with biscuits or pieces of crust on the top. Simple, straightforward, and delicious. Slumps have also gone by different, but not much better names, including grunts and pandowdies. They were popular in New England in the 19th century, and we think a comeback is way overdue. We'd even suggest that thanks to canned or frozen biscuits, this dessert is even easier, and easy dishes are precisely what Thanksgiving needs more of. Author Louisa May Alcott offered a snapshot of the Thanksgiving celebrations of her time with the 1882 short story An Old-Fashioned Thanksgiving. One of the dishes the girls in the story are sure to make is baked apples, which remained popular throughout the Great Depression. And why wouldn't it? It's easy to make, and it's basically apple pie without the crust. Cored apples filled with a mix of butter, sugar, and cinnamon, then baked. So if your worry is that you've already got too many pies between pumpkin, sweet potato, pecan, and vinegar of course, then this is a way to have some pie without the pie. Undoubtedly, this former staple of New England tables needs a new name. Maybe something like Molasses Delight, or how about a rum and vodka? The main ingredients are the base ingredients of rum and vodka, molasses and corn, but maybe that would make too many people think it's alcoholic. According to What's Cooking America, this dish has also been called Indian mush.
Oh, it just gets worse and worse.
In its earliest incarnation, which dates back to around 1796, this dessert was little more than a cornmeal mush with a dash of molasses added for sweetness. It has roots in an old-timey English dessert called hasty pudding that dates back to 1599. And if that doesn't sound appetizing in the least, don't worry, it gets better. Later recipes added things like raisins and spices, and in the handful of places where it's still served, it's often accompanied by vanilla ice cream. Since the pudding is served hot and the ice cream is cold, some have taken to calling it heaven and hell. That's not a bad name.
That's better.
Massachusetts Plymouth Plantation is a living museum that focuses on life in the 17th century, and it's gone to the trouble of recreating some authentic dishes that would have been found on local tables in that era. According to Boston Magazine, they hold their own Thanksgiving celebrations with these authentic recipes, and one that sounds absolutely delicious is Narragansett strawberry cornbread. Strawberries were a well-known treat. They even got a shout-out in the journals of Massachusetts Bay Colony leader John Winthrop, but it was the Narragansett tribe that first mixed them into cornbread. There are a lot of cornbread recipes out there, and it really is as simple as mixing in some strawberries, or as A Taste of History suggests, other dried berries. Just remember that if you're going authentic, it should be a recipe that doesn't use dairy or eggs. It's the perfect dessert for anyone who doesn't want to follow a heavy Thanksgiving meal with something overly sweet.
But you can't have my cornbread, that's for damn sure. Because if you try to take my cornbread, part 2 of my killing spree gonna begin up in here on your ass right now.
Pumpkin pie is hardly something that needs to make a comeback. It's the Thanksgiving dessert, and it's not going anywhere. But this is the original, which looked pretty different. Settlers really weren't impressed with the idea of eating pumpkin and scorned the idea until scurvy set in. It was native people who showed them how to do something tasty with it. According to What's Cooking America, there was no crust, and for good reason.
No crust. Doesn't seem strange to you.
There were no ovens around that would have been capable of baking one.
That makes sense.
The process was likely just cutting off the top of a pumpkin or other type of squash, taking out the innards, and baking it over an open fire. The Huffington Post reports that it would pretty quickly bake down into a version of pie. The pumpkin would have been sliced, and the inside would have been hot, tender, sweet, and delicious. It's easy to modernize too. Use your oven, and make sure you pick up a pie pumpkin and not a carving pumpkin. The Guardian pondered whether the Jell-O salad was, quote, an American abomination or Thanksgiving treat. It's a fair question. We've all seen the cringeworthy pictures of various meats and veggies floating in gelatin from 1970s-era cookbooks. Serious Eats says that gelatin-based desserts were once reserved for the rich and famous. Gelatin required a chef's skill to make. But when Jell-O came on the scene at the turn of the 20th century, things changed. People went a little nuts. Jell-O salads, with their jiggly exteriors and surprise fillings, were once called America's most famous dessert. And look, we're not talking about reviving the monstrosities of old. This is a simple Jell-O salad with cranberry and pineapple, maybe cranberries and raspberries, cranberry and orange. Add a layer of whipped cream and you'll have a sweet treat.
Yep, there's always room for Jell-O.
Nantucket cranberry pie is not precisely a pie in the typical sense. Instead of filling in a crust, it's basically a one-bowl cake-like batter poured over cranberries. It's baked until the cranberries turn soft yet remain tart and the cake becomes light and delicious. It's got all the flavors you want for Thanksgiving. And here's the bonus. It's nowhere near as heavy as a slice of pumpkin pie. Where did this amazing idea come from? The most popular recipe comes from a novelist named Laurie Colwin. It was published in an issue of Gourmet magazine in 1993. And we hate to break it to you, but the 90s are officially old school.
Hey, you take that back!
No, you take that back!
Abraham Lincoln is the president who declared Thanksgiving a national holiday. So what about enjoying a dessert right out of Mary Todd Lincoln's cookbook? Food blogger Tori Avey says Mrs. Lincoln's preferred cookbook was Miss Leslie's Complete Cookery, and nestled in its pages is a recipe for pumpkin pudding. Imagine a super moist dessert that's a cross between cake and pumpkin pie filling, and you've got the general idea. Miss Leslie's version was definitely decadent, served with a rich cream sauce and made with traditional pumpkin pie spices and a dash of rosewater. The Thanksgiving we celebrate today doesn't have a whole heck of a lot in common with what America's earliest settlers would have done. Tori Avey says we can largely thank Sarah Josepha Hale for most of the traditions we observe. In 1827, Hale published a novel called Northwood, A Tale of New England. It includes a whole chapter about a Thanksgiving meal, and the spread of roast turkey, stuffing, gravy, veggies, pies, and cranberry sauce sounded so good, it ended up being the blueprint for Thanksgiving dinners for decades after. So what better way to celebrate the mother of Thanksgiving than by bringing one of her desserts back to the table? It's an easy one too. The recipe for her apple pudding was published in her 1841 book, Early American Cookery, and it's basically a sweet pudding made from stewed apples, lemon, brown sugar, cream, and eggs, then baked like a pie. What the heck is a sonker? According to Open Table, the idea of a sonker can be traced back to North Carolina's Blue Ridge Mountains. It's basically a pie-like dessert made with a simple crust and filled with whatever was handy. It was a way to use and preserve everything in a crust that was easy to make with the most basic of ingredients. There's no one right way to make a sonker, but Epicurious says it's the sweet potato sonker that needs to make an appearance for Thanksgiving. It's got an impressive down-home pedigree too. It's the favored sonker in Mount Airy, North Carolina, the hometown of Andy Griffith. It's basically the official dessert of Mayberry.
First thing we do is plan a little dinner.
In the mid-1940s, wartime rationing made it impossible to make many longtime favorites, and desserts were at the top of the list. Sugar was in short supply, and it's not dessert if it's not sweet, right? According to the Louisville Courier-Journal, those Thanksgivings were tough, and not only because of shortages. In 1945, the paper wrote, "In spite of anxiety, in spite of the knowledge that families are mostly incomplete, we still mark the day in our calendar and try to give fully, to continue the tradition in which we consciously give thanks for our many blessings." Those are somber thoughts. That same year, the food editor suggested a way in which cooks could, quote, "fulfill the family dream of apple pie," and it's a delicious solution that needs to make a comeback. Instead of sugar, Marguerite T. Finnegan suggested using molasses, honey, or corn syrup as a sweetener. Her deep dish apple pie calls for a little more than half a cup of honey, and that sounds delicious. The turkey's done, the table is cleared, and the Thanksgiving dishes are in the sink. Everyone's filled to the brim, but this is the exact time that something hot, sweet, and comforting is just what everyone's craving. So why not heat up some Dr. Pepper? Sounds weird, right? Serious Eats says the idea was essentially created by Dr. Pepper's marketing team in the 1960s, and that pretty much explains everything. Cold drink sales tended to drop off during the holiday and winter months, and by advertising this hot and fizzy drink, they were hoping to boost their fourth quarter numbers.
Yes, Dr. Pepper is delicious cold or hot.
It was popular for a while, and it's still popular in some pockets of the South, but it's largely faded from mainstream consciousness. Here's the big shock though, it's better than you'd expect. It's just Dr. Pepper heated with a thin slice of lemon. It's great for the kids, and old advertisements thought of the grown-ups too. They suggest adding a dash of rum for a drink they called the Boomer. Steamed cranberry pudding is a pudding in the British sense of the word. It's anything steamed in a container. According to British food history, the ancestors of the puddings we're suggesting you whip up this Thanksgiving were once a serious delicacy. They were sweet and spicy dishes, usually served as part of the main meal, along with the side dishes. We saved the sweet things for dessert now, and a recipe for steamed cranberry pudding, plucked from the pages of a cookbook written at the time when women were identified solely by their husbands' names, is just the right amount of sweet. The one Baltimore fishbowl found was written by Mrs. A. Van Eerden, and it's a British pudding with a distinctly American twist. It's made with cranberries, molasses, cream, butter, and just a dash of vanilla, among other things. Then the super thick mixture is poured into a can, and it's steamed rather than baked. It's delicious, different, and a nod to the place from which those original settlers hailed. For many, Thanksgiving is one of the few times of the year they see certain members of their families, and it can often be a reminder of why that is. Whether it's the aunt who wants to know why you've made certain life choices, or the grandfather who's fond of remembering just how things were better in the old days before you were around. Boy, do we have a dessert for those folks. In 1957, the Monroe News Star ran a piece promising that the cranberry soufflé salad was going to, quote, "be the highlight of your meal." It was lauded as a fast luxury touch, and it could be made quickly by popping it into the freezing unit.
Activate freezing units.
The basics involve lemon gelatin, cranberry sauce, celery, and pineapple, all mixed and frozen together. Oh, and the surprise? There's a heck of a lot of mayonnaise mixed in there too, with a footnote that, if you'd like, you can garnish it with more mayo before you serve.
What the Hellmann's real mayonnaise?
It hung around for a bit. Hellmann's published its official recipe in 1958. It's exactly what you should make for that family member who's always speaking so fondly of the good old days.